Hello and welcome to the Swedish Skeptics in the Pub online. So the Swedish Skeptics, of course, are an organization in Sweden, and we look into skeptical things. We are scientific skepticism is what we are doing. We do not we're not deniers of anything. If the science we go where the science takes us, so that's very important to remember. We usually do this Skeptics in the Pub, and like a lot of skeptics groups do around the world, in an actual pub. But during this pandemic, we have learned how to do it remotely. So this is what we're doing. Skeptics in the Pub is where we invite somebody, some interesting person to give a talk, to say something, to teach us something, because we always want to learn more. And then we have a little break, and during the break we can gather our questions, and then we will come back for a question and answer session. And this is how it will work today as well. I should say that below me you will see a link to something called Slido. So if you go to sli.do/VOF, you can put in your questions, and you can do it whenever you want to. And even if you don't have a question, it might be a good idea to go in there, because you can vote on other people's questions as well. And the questions that get a lot of votes float to the top and have a bigger chance of getting answered. So today, it's not me who's going to talk. We have today, all the way from Australia, Richard Saunders, and I will click here and make sure that you can see him as well. Welcome, Richard. Here he is.
Hey son.
What time is it, Richard, in Sydney?
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. No, it's not. It's actually just after 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm doing okay. I've had my morning coffee in my special
prediction mug.
Coffee mug.
Yes.
Prediction, the psychic mug.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It says you will spill this. Well, I hope that doesn't turn out to be true.
Not during the transmission, anyway.
No.
So Richard, of course, for people who don't know, is a long-time skeptic. He's been active in the Australian and international skeptic movement for a long time. He is mostly famous, at least for us abroad, for the Skeptic Zone, which is his podcast. When did you start that, Richard? It was a long time ago.
I started that a long time ago in 1426. In
stone tablets.
It seems like
yes.
it. That's right. People used to gather around, and it was started in 2008.
Okay.
2008.
Well, that is almost the Stone Age for podcasting.
It is.
Anyway, so we call this The Adventures of Richard Saunders. So I will leave the word over to him, and he will go through some of his experiences in skepticism. And towards the end, we will get into the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, something that you will hear more about later. So then we will just hand over to you, Richard.
All right. Thumbs up from Pontus. Thumbs up from Pontus. Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Wonderful opportunity. Skeptics in the Pub. Pontus was going to fly me over, of course, and give me a nice evening at the pub in Sweden, but it just didn't happen. It wasn't anything to do with the fact that Pontus doesn't want to fly me over or anything. So this is the next best thing. Here I am via the internet. I'm going to talk about some of my adventures, some of my investigations, and some of the things that I've been doing over 2 decades of being involved in the skeptics. And 2 of the big things, of course, in my podcast is Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv and my involvement with the Australian Skeptics. I'm a life member of the Australian Skeptics. I've been a life member now for nearly 20 years. I'm also a fellow for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. I used to be part of the James Randi Educational Foundation's $1 million challenge in Las Vegas, and that's a whole other experience and talk. One day we might get to that, all the fun and excitement of that. I did a TV show here in Australia some years ago where I was the skeptical judge, judging so-called psychics. I do a show for schools. When COVID isn't around, I do a show for schools called The Mystery Investigators. It's all about science and skepticism. The podcast, of course, I've written many books for children, mostly about origami, which we'll get to in a second. And which we'll talk about later, I do documentary films. And one I did about vaccinations, but as I say, we'll get to that a bit later. And I fold lots of origami. And I'm also, from time to time, I take part in TV shows and movies, soap operas, parts in movies and things like that, which is a lot of fun. And there's just I have with origami. The top one there is Pegasus the Flying Pig, which James Randi asked me to invent. One day he said I should come up with his logo, the flying pig, and I did that many years ago, and that's a great little model. And that lower one there is so much fun. I didn't invent the alien, but an origami alien I think is fantastic. And it's sort of like a crossover between two of my interests in life. Yes, I have been to Sweden. Oh, I have been to Sweden. It was during very late 1992. I think it was New Year's Eve. It's a long time ago. And I can't tell you where exactly it was. I got on a ferry from Germany, drove some hours with some friends. We ended up at a farmhouse near a frozen lake. I'm sure that means a lot to everybody. I'm sure you know exactly where I was. But it was I remember the amazing feeling of walking out on that lake and hearing the cracking of the ice. I will never forget that. It was just incredible. What a great time that was with my friends all those years ago. But don't worry. I still have the opportunity to experience Swedish culture right here in Sydney. I don't know if you've heard of a place called IKEA. Well, I discovered this place and it has a Swedish restaurant. It's just fantastic. And I was only there yesterday, I promise you, having some chicken. I don't know if it was Swedish chicken or not, but I did that just the other day. So, yes, the Skeptic Zone podcast, as I said before, has been going now since 2008. We're up to episode 688, I think is the next episode, something like that. So every week, since 2008, late 2008, I have been creating and producing, recording a podcast. One day I will find something better to do. I don't know. It's a long time to do a podcast. And just out of interest, over all those years, that's just some of the microphones that I've used. And people make fun of me sometimes in a good way about all the microphones. My friend Susan Gerbic, who I think you probably know that name, she always makes fun of me because when I turn up to interview her, I've always got the new microphone or the latest microphone or something like that. But from my point of view, they're all necessary because I use them all. I use them all during the podcast for interviews and live reports and something like that. If you haven't heard the Skeptic Zone, there's a slide there of the faces of the current team of reporters on the Skeptic Zone. So lots of people pop up on the show from time to time to contribute, to give reports, investigations, reviews, and all sorts of things like that. What a wonderful group of people. What a wonderful group of people they are. And of course, there's other podcasts in the world, so it's not just the Skeptic Zone. So, there's one that I've heard about, a new one. It's called, what is it called? The European something. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of being in a meeting with the European Skeptics podcast, The Real ESP Experience. And we recorded a part from my show where I interviewed everybody for the 300th episode. And it was just wonderful to all share the screen and do a joint session together. So if you don't listen to the ESP, you should. And just from a slightly technical, interesting point of view, I used to do all the editing of my podcast on computers. Well, I still do, really. But maybe 5-6 years ago, I changed, and it's now 80% done on iPad. I can do 100% of the show, every aspect on an iPad if I have to, but editing, there's a great program called Ferrite, which I use on iPad, which is a fantastic audio editor, and that's what I use these days. Now, the Australian Skeptics, which is the organization I'm mostly involved with, the Australian Skeptics has been in operation now since late 1980. I think it was getting started around late 1980, and it was inspired by the man you see in that photograph there. Well, the man in the foreground, his name is Dick Smith, and he's a millionaire adventurer. He's done things like he's flown helicopters to the North Pole. He flew a helicopter around the world. He flew a hot air balloon from Australia to New Zealand, lots of adventures. And he, in 1980, flew James Randi to Australia to conduct water divining tests. And that was where the idea and the momentum for Australian Skeptics came from. And that's a cover of our magazine called The Skeptic, which is now been in publication for just over 40 years. And something to remember about that magazine is that all the back issues, going back decades, are available for free if you go to our website, which we'll get to a bit later on. The only ones that aren't available are the last 4 issues. If you subscribe, you can get those as they come out in your inbox, or you can get them in the post. But all the other issues are free for you to download and read. One of the major things we have every year, and this is a lot of fun, is called the Bent Spoon Award. And there we have James Randi and myself almost 10 years ago when James Randi was in Australia, and he helped present that year's Bent Spoon Award. And it really is an award we give to an outrageous claim from the paranormal or the pseudoscience or something like that. This year, only last weekend or the weekend before, we awarded this to a politician here in Australia who is shouting about conspiracy theories and bad advice for COVID-19. So it's not just paranormal, it can be using bad science. And like James Randi, well, not anymore, of course, but we have a big cash prize. Anybody who can demonstrate their paranormal ability in a fair test will get $100,000. That must be almost 6 krona, I think, in Swedish. I'm not sure. I don't know what the conversion rate is. I can see Pontus laughing. And after 40 years, and the amount was less, and I think easily 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it went to $100,000. Now, you would think that somebody could easily just pick up that money, because we have thousands of people in Australia who think they have psychic paranormal powers. But in all the years, of course, and this is reflected all around the world, no one has been able to successfully just demonstrate these powers. Nobody. And one of the most tested, the most examined claim in Australia, I guess, has been water divining or water dowsing. You probably have it in Sweden too, in other parts of the world, of course, where you get a pendulum, something on the end of a string, or a pair of wires, or wood, or one wire, or a bit of wood, or anything. Some people use their hands and discover underground water. Again, nobody has been able to show they can really do that when tested. And that guy on the very left of the screen is me in the year 1994, possibly. And that was in Scotland, where I took part in a water divining test or examination as part of the Scottish Science Festival or something like that. It was a long time ago. I can't remember the details exactly. Another aspect of skepticism, which has been a lot of fun for me over the years, and something people older generations remember this very well. It's something called spoon bending, which is a magic trick, which is a trick you learn, you practice, and there I have been bending spoons for people at public demonstrations and all sorts of things for many, many, many years. And it's a lot of fun. And it's a classic example of a paranormal claim that is so transparent, so understood, so known. It's almost a joke. It's almost a joke. But I still get a kick out of fooling people bending spoons. And of course, this all stems from the psychic star from the 70s, Uri Geller, who a lot of people will remember. And I've met people in the last 20 years, I've had conversations with people who saw Uri Geller perform here in Sydney, who insist, at the time I spoke to them, they said, he's real, I was there, I saw it, he really does bend spoons. And one guy who was the president of the Psychics Association, he and I did a TV show together, like a chat show. And during this TV show, I got out a spoon and I did this, and the spoon was melting and bending. And he couldn't believe it. He could not believe I could do the same thing. And it was just amazing. And after the show, in the dressing room, I showed him how it worked. I said, you should know how this works. You don't be fooled. It's a trick. And then he said, yes, but when you do it, it's a trick. When Uri Geller did it, it was real psychic power. If anybody's wondering if Uri Geller knows what he's doing or not, then there's an interesting video I'll play right now. So this will be the next one coming up. And this was, I believe, from an Italian TV show many, many years ago. But I'll just watch it, and I think it speaks for itself. Here it comes.
Ripeto, con la forza fisica non si riesce a piegarle.
What I do is I say to it, go.
Io ho detto semplicemente piegati.
Now that's the angle. The key is in his hand before he starts to bend it. And as you can see, the angle does not change. The key does not bend. It simply moves position. And this is one of the routines I regularly use to make keys and spoons appear to bend. Of course, obviously, when Uri Geller did this, he must have been having a bad psychic day, because I would never suggest he doesn't bend spoons using psychic power. Next slide. Oh, we've seen that one. Here we go. One of the other adventures I've had along the way, and one of the successes I've had, that not always successful, you don't always stop the bad thing from happening. In 2009, there was a fad, a craze, as we call it, of something called power balance. This was a wristband made out of rubber with two little holograms in it, and it was being sold in Australia for $60, $60. That's a lot of krona in anybody's language. And the claim was that if you wore this, it would increase your balance, your strength, your flexibility, you'd think clearer, you could play better football. And we had football players in Australia wearing them, and everybody wanted one. They were selling hundreds and hundreds of these things. And when I saw this on a TV show being reported, and I saw the tests they were doing to show that it really worked, I knew what I was looking at. I was looking at old carnival tricks, the tricks of changing people's balance and pushing down and everything. So I wrote to the TV show. I said, last week you had this story and had a lot of people watching, but I know what's really happening. And they phoned me straight back and said, would you like to come on and we'll do a test? Because they had a hot story. I said, sure. So they flew me from Sydney to the city of Adelaide in South Australia, and we spent a day filming with the man who was here in Australia, the company representative. And this is the results. I'll click to the next one. And this is the video about a week later that went out on national TV.
And the secret is supposed to be locked up in that hologram, says Tom O'Dowd, whose company sells them for $60 in Australia.
It's a frequency that's been embedded in the MRLR technology in the hologram. What it does, it reacts with the electrical field of your body.
That's plain nonsense, according to Richard Saunders from the Australian Skeptics Society.
No, I'm not convinced. Not yet. I mean, I can be convinced. We'll see what happens.
With Richard looking on, we asked Tom to put the claims to a blind test using 6 volunteers. More on that shortly. So on to our tests. Tom carried out his usual balance and strength routines, using a card embedded with that hologram, then with the bracelet. All 6 reported a positive reaction, that is, when they could see it.
Yeah, that was working all right on you. Okay. Feel the difference?
Richard thinks it might have more to do with physics or the angles which Tom is exerting his force.
It's actually you're controlling whether the person is weak or strong, not the pendant.
Next, a series of blind tests. I randomly placed 6 cards in their pockets. Only one, the 5th in line, had the card with the hologram. It was up to Tom to detect who had it.
Well, I'm going to take a real stab at it, and I'm going to say, you've got it. So let's have a look in your pockets. Ah, well, there you go.
Yeah. I don't have it.
Oh, dear. So when we filmed, I think we filmed 6 tests. They only showed 4, I think, on TV, and he failed every test. Fail. And when he'd failed 5 or something, I said to the reporter when we were filming, I said, we have to stop this. It's I feel bad for him now. It's not working. And that story helped. It was like a snowball. When that story got out and people around the world see that it failed completely, then the government came in with regulations and said, this is making illegal claims. You can't claim it. It changes people's balance and strength and everything else. And finally, the company came down. And I always think to myself, wow, I sort of helped save millions of people around the world, millions of dollars. But none of that came to me. But anyway. Next. Here we go. So the next crazy thing, one of the next fun things I've discovered over the years are claims, sort of like the last claim, where you have a little device which makes all sorts of pseudoscience claims using words like balance and frequency and harmonics and vibrations and all this sort of thing. Another one recently was this called the Premium Wine Card, which was here in Australia. It's a card made out of metal. And the idea is you get this card and you rub it on your wine glass and it makes your wine taste better. And if you don't believe me, there's some of the advertising there from the website of the Premium Wine Card. Although they've taken them down some years ago, they had on their website lots of videos showing you how good this wine card was. Let's have a look at one, and maybe you too would like to get the Premium Wine Card.
Welcome to the Premium Wine Card. Premium Wine Card is the latest technology which allows you to change the taste of ordinary wine into premium wine in just a few seconds. Today I'm going to show you a simple test so you can enjoy better tasting wine yourself. This glass will have the wine poured straight from the bottle, and this glass will have the wine treated with the Premium Wine Card. This is the wine poured straight from the bottle. While I pour the next glass, I'm going to hold the Premium Wine Card against the glass to treat the wine as it's poured. If the wine has already been poured, like in a restaurant, then gently hold the card's wine glass symbol against the glass and move it up and down for about 15 seconds to improve the wine. When you smell the wine, it may now have a full fruit flavour. If there is a strong smell coming from the wine, then gently blow into the glass to remove it. Taste the treated wine first. Now taste the glass of ordinary wine that was poured straight from the bottle. You will immediately notice that the wine treated with the premium wine card tastes so much better. Cheers. Improving the taste of your wine is that simple. Get your premium wine card today. For more information, visit premiumwinecard.com.
Just amazing. I mean, when you see something like that, I've shown this video at conferences and people just are falling about laughing. It's so ridiculous. Yet this card was being sold for, I think, over $100. Over $100. And of course, when you look at the documentation, how does premium wine card work? It talks about, it just uses things from pseudoscience. It says it interacts with the frequencies, and it's like they went to the dictionary and said, where's some words that sound like they're from science? And we use those. They probably use quantum in there somewhere along the way. But one of the things that they did have on their website, which I thought was very telling, was they turned up at a exhibition with their wine card to sell it. And they filmed people testing it. And this is the video they used to have on their website, which I made a copy of this. And I think it's very, very telling. Look at the reactions of the people. It's only a short video, but look at the reactions of the people when they taste the wine that was not treated with the wine card.
Confirm you don't mind if we record your skeptical reactions? Okay.
Because you will get no reaction. Yep. Okay.
So that's
was that 15 seconds? That was 15 seconds. Yes, it was. Yeah.
That's more than enough. So now you'll taste the treated glass. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And now we'll get you to taste the one straight out of the bottle.
Okay. Yep. Look into the camera.
So which of the two would you prefer?
This one. So that's the treated one. And I drink this one first. So you drink that first, yeah. And then this one's the non-treated one. So then the China.
Yeah, hold on, Robbie.
And what's your
China, and then try the untreated.
That's the untreated.
That's untreated.
Obviously got to get a bit okay.
Is that something like your wine?
Yeah, that's not bad. So does this you?
Now, those are not the faces that humans make when they taste something which is slightly different from the last thing they taste. That is the natural reaction humans have when they taste something which is bad. And what I might suspect, and of course I don't know, and it's just a hypothesis, that the something was very different about the two glasses in order to get that reaction from those women at that particular occasion. Now, we, of course, being skeptics and very open-minded, we tested this card ourselves. I have one, and we did a series of tests at our Skeptics in the pub, which was a great evening. We tested this wine card in a double-blind fashion. And also, a couple of years ago, I went to the state of Victoria to a skeptic camp down there, and we, at the skeptic camp, tested the wine card with many glasses of wine throughout the day. The whole skeptic camp, people would stop after the break. They'd run to the back of the hall and drink lots of wine, well, test, and we'd write down all their results. And it's one of the wonderful things about being in the Skeptics. You meet and get to have a lot of fun with the best people. There's me at the top there with my dear friend Dr. Steve Roberts, a longtime skeptic in Victoria, and Michelle Vickersma, who has a little house near where we did the skeptic camp. And she helped on the day and took part in the wine test. And for those people who listen to the Skeptic Zone podcast, you might be familiar with this skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet. It's a character we have who flies in and talks about logical fallacies and all sorts of things. Well, she's a very close friend of Michelle Vickersma, I must say. I think the two might be distantly related. But what a fun time it was. Lots of people lining up, testing wine. What do you think? Writing down their results. And of course, then, and very important, the whole report about the wine card and our investigations was written up and published in our magazine. And indeed, if you go to skeptics.com.au, as I said before, all the back issues are there for you to enjoy, including that one, where you can read all about the wine card and how we tested the wine card. And there's the back of the hall with me doing a report for the Skeptic Zone. And let me see, that was volume 40, number 2, if you're looking on the page of issues to download. So let's move on in the second part here and talk about some quackery. I often go to what we call Mind, Body, Spirit festivals here in Sydney when they're on, when COVID isn't around, or as we call them, Mind, Body, Wallet. And over 2 decades, I've seen some outrageous things there, some terrible things, some people claiming they could cure cancer and all sorts of things. Here's one of the top quack devices I've ever seen. It's a laptop, you'll see in a moment. You put on headphones over the top of your head, you put these headphones on, you plug them into the laptop, and the idea is the laptop is running a program which sends frequencies through the headphones, scans your body, goes back through the headphones into the computer, and it can tell you what's wrong with you and show you on the screen. Look at that, a big cross-section of a cell or something like that. And this was being promoted by a naturopath here in Sydney. It's called the Metatron Non-Linear Scanner. You can test for, and look, only $115. What a bargain, including one homeopathic remedy, even better. And as you can see by the images in there, it says, you know, it'll show you parts of your body and where the parasites and the nasty things are and fix you up. It's Star Trek. It's not even Dr. McCoy would make such an outrageous claim. It's just crazy. And the naturopath also, I went to her website and she talks about Reiki and iridology. You know, just use classic quackery, things that have no solid science behind them. And then she says that she uses scientific diagnostic tools, which is this device. Now, I suspect she's bought this for a lot of money and she's convinced it actually works. And she's happy to use it on people. And what I've also discovered is people like that also tend to be, and we'll get to this soon, heavily into conspiracy theories. So I'm not surprised that she also thinks that the chemtrails are real and fluoride is bad and all sorts of things like that. Conspiracy theories are at the root of a lot of things we fight in the Skeptics. It's amazing. It's amazing. People who believe in nonsense usually will wind up believing in all sorts of conspiracy theories. And there it is, the booth there at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, and you can see there's the monitor and somebody's got their self hooked up to it with a little pair of headphones there. And what I have here in a moment, here's our reporter on the Skeptic Zone, Aran Segev, former president of the Australian Skeptics, a good friend of mine, who volunteered to go underdo this test. And there's the computer you can see there. Now, I haven't written the formal report about our investigations into this because they're still ongoing, and there's a lot to do. So this is some of the screenshots you see when you have this test done. So it looks like it's showing you your body and where the parasites or some problems might be. And here we have a short video showing you the process in action.
What about inflammations of various kinds? And what about cancer? What about
cancer? No.
You want to know?
What do you ask?
No, I just want to know.
No. I can show.
Now that's just pretty pictures with things flowing and bars moving and levels leveling. It doesn't mean anything. It's just somebody has invented this program that looks like it's doing something enough to, quite frankly, fool a lot of people. And there we are. You can even get, when it scans your body, it will even create in that little tube there, it will even create a homeopathic remedy for you. What a bargain. What a bargain. And there's a big claim that was published on their webpage some years ago. It said it could zapping viruses. It could kill a virus. And that's one of the things that we will bring up when the official report comes along, because to me that should be an illegal claim. I think it is illegal to say that you can do something like that, especially now with COVID. So I wrote to her on the webpage when she was talking about it, and I said, it looks too good to be true. And then she said, why don't I come to the Mind, Body, Spirit and see for myself, which of course I did, rather than expressing your opinion without understanding the technology. Well, I understand the technology very well. It's a computer program that shows graphics. And I said to her that it doesn't exist. It's this thing is just a series of videos on the screen. And then I offered her the $100,000 from Australian Skeptics. But of course, I ended saying that you should prove this to the health authorities. Don't worry about me. Prove it to the health authorities. And it's the health authorities in this country who should be taking action against things like this. And I discovered that it comes from Russia, from the Institute of Practical Psychophysics. And that's another investigation. So someone is producing these programs and selling them around the world, and people like naturopaths are buying them. Now let's talk about, towards the end, we can talk about something that a lot of naturopaths are wrapped up in, of course, is anti-vaccination and conspiracy theories. And over 2 decades, where I've been involved, I've been fighting with my friends the anti-vaccination movement here in Australia, and that's typical of what they put out. Vaccines are poison, they cause death and all sorts of things, autism. You've heard it all before, I'm sure. The #1 network here in Australia pushing this, well, they used to be, I don't know anymore because COVID has changed a lot of things. The Australian Vaccination Network call themselves now the Australian Vaccination Risks Network. And there's a typical thing from them mentioning allergies and asthma and death and all sorts of crazy things. They're just very wrapped up in conspiracy theories. And even I was at a public meeting in 2002 where one of the speakers said that vaccinations were a deliberate policy from World Health Organization and Save the Children. He said that they were designed to depopulate Africa. And these organizations put Hitler and Stalin in the shade. It's just madness, conspiracy theory wrapped in madness. But now the whole world has seen how powerful the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theories are, because this is just scenes from here in Australia. These ones happen to come from Melbourne, where we've had giant protests. And the anti-vaccination conspiracies have really taken a firm hold around the world, I think. There's one guy, honk if you think COVID is a scam. There are lots of people who still think that this thing is not real, it's invented, people aren't dying, and it's just a way to control the population. It's very sad. It's very sad that we've come to this stage. Now to talk about the Vaccination Chronicles. Oh, I've accidentally put my picture over the words there. Never mind. It says Vaccination Chronicles. Some years ago, I did a documentary about people's memories of times before vaccination for things like polio. And that proved very, what's the word? It was very important. So I actually did a sort of a version in Swedish, and after the talk, I'm sure Pontus will show you, where I sent Pontus the files for a DVD, and he had DVDs made up. But this is all on YouTube. If you look on YouTube, you can find the Vaccination Chronicles documentary, and of course, it's got Swedish subtitles and subtitles in a lot of languages. But that's a very important thing of what I do. Now, to wrap up, the project that I have been involved with now for 12 years. It's called the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project. And this was an investigation headed up by me and a team of people helped me along the way. And our goal was to catalog and analyze as many psychic predictions as we could. And we ended up with 3,811 psychic predictions. And I'm pretty sure I'm safe when I'm saying this is the largest study of this type ever undertaken. So people have claimed they can see the future using stars, cards, all sorts of things, talking to angels, getting messages from God, whatever the case is. There are people who claim they can see future events. And this is something the skeptics can look at, we can examine, we can investigate. We can't ever let ourselves sit back in our nice chairs and say, I don't think that's possible. No, it's rubbish. It's obviously false. I don't believe it. We have to investigate to make sure, to know what we're talking about. Now, probably it's the same place wherever you're watching this from around the world, probably too in Sweden, that at the end of the year on the radio and TV, psychics will appear, so-called psychics, people who think they have magical powers, or maybe they know they don't. And they'll give predictions. What's coming up this year for Sweden? Well, it's going to be lots of snow. Amazing. And I can hear Pontus laughing in the background. And this is very popular, and it's been popular for decades and decades around the world. And it's still going to be popular. People like to hear about predictions. So I went to I don't know if that's working for you, but I've got a slight color problem with that page, but it's okay. It's just the cover of a magazine. I started with the predictions made in the Psychics directory here in Australia, and I just kept collecting and collecting and collecting and collecting. And I went to, libraries around Australia. Here's me in the State Library in Victoria, in the city of Melbourne, with my friend Steve Roberts again. And we sat down, and for almost a week, we went through magazines in their archives where these predictions are published, popular magazines. And it took a long time here in Sydney, and I also went on YouTube. I collected things. I studied archives of newspapers, anywhere I could, and ended up with thousands and thousands of predictions. And I had lots of help. So there's many people, too many to name quickly, but all these people helped me, especially the people you see above there in the Zoom screen. For over a year, we met every week for at least 2 hours every week, and we went through and we studied these predictions, and we analyzed them, and we researched them, and we said, did it happen? Did it not happen? What's the story? Can we find out what happened? But that was a lot of fun, and all those people are wonderful friends. And some of them I haven't even ever seen in person, which is a bit crazy. And there's an example from the database there. You can see we've got when the year the prediction was made, who made the prediction, where it was published, the topic and subject of the prediction, if it's politics or sport or whatever the case may be, the actual prediction itself, the wording exactly, and what we discovered or what we thought, if it was wrong, if it was correct, and so on. And just out of interest, there are the top categories. The number one thing predicted about in Australia in the last 2 decades was celebrities, movie stars, TV stars, people like that. And followed by other popular topics like politics, sports, the royal family, natural disasters, and so on. And right on the end of the last column there is the percentage they got correct, which is pretty low. Politics is a little bit better, nearly 19% there, 18.58%. But for people who claim that they can see the future better than us because they've got special, mystical, magical powers, at the end of the day, we discovered that they can do no better than just guessing. Just guessing. In fact, there's a breakdown. As you can see, the majority of predictions were simply wrong. They were just wrong. But then we have a further slices there where we have too vague and expected. Now, too vague, something like somebody predicted, next year I see major changes. What? What does that even mean? Things like that were too vague. Or expected. And I don't think it's in the database, but there are similar things like, I predict next year there will be snow in Sweden. In the database, we have things like, I predict earthquakes in California. So things that, of course, they're going to happen. Or normally any year this would happen, we call those expected. And the correct is 10.9, nearly 11%. That's all. That's all, which means nearly 90% of what they predict is not correct. So I invented Saunders' law of psychic predictions. Given enough predictions, hundreds and hundreds or thousands, the number of predictions which we can claim or look at and say they're correct is about 11%. Again, when you think about it, that's not for people claiming magical powers. That's no better than guessing. It's no better than guessing. So finally, let me mention my experiences with James the Amazing Randi. I met James Randi, 25 years ago, originally, briefly at a talk. Then I met him later at a Skeptics convention, and over the 2 decades, I had lots more interaction with Randi. We ended up touring together in Australia, which was a fabulous experience. We would keep in regular contact and Zoom and chat to each other. I'd always see him at conventions, and we became just really good friends. You know, I really knew the man well enough to interview him live on stage because I knew his story and his life and his activities. And he's still an inspiration, and we still miss him very much. And it's just a huge part of my life was my friendship with James Randi, and I miss our chats and I miss his advice. But that's it. That's just some of the adventures and fun I've had over the years. Tune in next week for part 2, then part 3. No, there's more. There's more, which can wait until I visit Sweden and I can be with you in the real pub, and we can bend spoons and I can show you the tricks of the power balance, and we can have all sorts of fun. But now, indeed, thank you very much. Now, Pontus, should I stop sharing my screen or does it matter?
All right. Thank you very much, Richard. It was fantastic, very interesting to see. And I hope that people have found the questions page at slido, sli.do/VOF. There are a few questions there already, but during the break, what time is it? It is almost 10 past. Let's meet back here at 9 o'clock p.m. Swedish time. I don't know where you're looking from, but what time zone you're in, but at 9 o'clock Central European time we will be back. And in the meantime, get a refreshment, do what you need to do, but also remember to go into the I predict there will be more questions after the break. Hello there and welcome back. We have had quite a few questions coming in over the break here, so we're going to dig into that. And I also have, I've told Richard that I have a few questions of my own that we may, if we don't run out of time, or maybe it's breakfast time for you soon there, over there in Sydney. But if you, depending on how long it takes, I have a few questions myself that we can dig into. So. But let's just start then, and this is the first question. So, who donated the $100,000 that the Australian Skeptics, the challenge, as I'm told it's called?
All right. So, yes. So, originally it was Dick Smith, the adventurer, the millionaire who flew James Randi to Australia. He, together with some other people, put up thousands of dollars. But in the year 2000, a man up in Queensland, up in north part of Australia, who we never met, died and left us in his will $1 million.
Wow.
And so we've used that money, we invested that money, and we use it for educational purposes and to keep things going. But $100,000 of that was put aside, especially for the prize. And it sounds a bit crazy, but when you think about it, $100,000, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's not a stupidly huge amount of money. It's not $1 million. So we do have the money, and it's still sitting there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it pays off to have good friends. But I think it's great to see that at least some people understand that this is a valuable thing to, well, I wouldn't say invest in, but to sponsor.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah.
Right. So the next question is incidentally also about money, Richard, and it's directed to you. How do you find time to do all this skepticism? Are you paid to do this?
Only a little bit. I get subscribers via Patreon and PayPal to the Skeptic Zone podcast, which helps. Mm-hmm. It doesn't cover all the bills, but it helps because I spend a lot of money doing the show. Mostly in the time my free time, when I can, I devote it to doing this stuff. When I do the shows for the schools and public groups like that called the Mystery Investigators, that's a business. That's a paid show, so I get paid for doing that. And when I did the TV show here in Australia, when I was a star on the TV show, then that I got paid like somebody on TV. Yeah. But apart from that, no, I make money doing other things like video work and other TV and movie work. Yeah. But skepticism takes up so much of my time that if I chose another career, I used to work for internet departments for a major bank in Australia, for example, and I made a lot more money. But it wasn't for me. I discovered that it was just not satisfying. And even though I make a tiny fraction of what I used to make, I get to do adventures and I get to bust quacks and I get to help people. So it's give and take. Yeah,
right. We're all grateful, the rest of us, to get to listen to the Skeptic Zone every week.
And if anybody wants to help by becoming a Patreon at skepticzone.tv, please. It helps.
That's right. That's right. You saw everybody who's watching saw the little promo we had there in the break. So you'd go there.
Right.
Okay. Jens Persson asks, and by the way, he's the guy who's helping us with telling me when I'm doing things wrong, when there's no sound, etc.
A good man to know.
Yes, very good. So what he's saying is, or asking, the quote-unquote scanning lady refused to say that the scanner detected cancer. Is this due to special regulations around cancer in Australia?
Possibly. I don't know exactly. I think she got a little bit suspicious because normally people who sit down and have their body scanned wouldn't ask about cancer. Mm-hmm. When you start to ask these people important questions, it doesn't take long for them to get suspicious because most people don't ask questions. They might ask, how does it work? Or does it do this? But if you start to nail it down, and quite possibly she started to be a little bit cautious. Right. But there are other people I've seen at that same place who openly say this water can help you protect you against cancer and things like that. Right. So, yeah, I guess she was being a bit suspicious. Why are these people asking questions? That's just not normal.
No. But are there special regulations regarding cancer claims in
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, very strict regulations. You can't market anything that says it's a cure for cancer. That's illegal. The trick is finding these people and getting them to court or getting the government to do something about it, which doesn't always happen.
So the regulations don't have much teeth?
Well, they can, not as much as we would hope, because, I mean, my dream is one day to have the whole Mind, Body, Spirit Festival raided by the health authorities.
Yeah, but then
this is wrong. This can't work. This is wrong. Yeah.
But then where would you go? I think you enjoy going to the place.
I'd go to Sweden, Pontus, naturally.
Right. Okay. Good. Let's take the next one. What skeptic project would you like to start in case there were enough funds for it? So if you got another $1 million, what would you do?
Ooh, well, if I had that sort of money and I could decide and do something, I think I would expand the idea of education to school kids, because the show I've been doing now for 20 years, we do water divining. It's a live show, me and some friends. And we'd look at optical illusions. We'd tell people how the tricks work. I think I'd look into expanding that so more school children could learn about doing scientific tests in a really fun way. Like water divining, for example, we have lots of kids try it for themselves, and we explain how a double-blind test works, and they hunt for the water, and then we look at rolling the dice, and I think possibly I'd do something like that, yeah, because I enjoy that.
Yeah, right. Is that the Mystery Investigators?
The Mystery Investigators, yes, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that started?
Well, in about 2003, I was at a Skeptics convention here in Australia, and I was sitting with a friend of mine who was in the Skeptics at the time. We were sitting at a table at lunch or dinner, and there was a science teacher with us. Just came to the convention, and I can't remember who it was now. It's too long ago. But they were saying, wouldn't it be great if somebody could come to our school and show some tricks, some psychic tricks? And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Mm. So we wrote a show, and we went to the school a couple of months later, I guess, and we did a free show just to see if it worked, if the ideas we had worked, and it was okay, and it worked. And ever since then, every year I've been doing the show. But in the last 2 years, the show stopped because of COVID, which is bad for the fact that thousands of school students who I'd normally talk to every year haven't had the benefit of seeing these things and discovering. And also, every year it was a source of income. So lots of people around the world have lost their jobs because of COVID. I know that. Me too. I've lost a big part of my annual normal income because of COVID. But in the scheme of things, it's not too bad. I'm doing okay. A lot of people are doing it, having a terrible time, and have lost members of their family or whatever it is. Yeah. But yeah, that's what happened.
Right. So to linger a little bit, how many of those Mystery Investigator appearances did you do per year? If you
when I could, I can't give you a good answer. But in the last decade or so, it really was down to not many weeks of the year. Normally during Science Week here in Australia, we would go to the museum, the big museum here in Sydney. And we'd do many, many, many shows in the one place. So in the morning we'd do shows, in the afternoon we'd do shows, and students would come in, students would come out all day. But it was very difficult to do big tours of high schools or something like that. It was more doing it in a central location. But nevertheless, it was good, and I hope I can do it next year.
Yeah, and it's very rewarding. I have done similar things.
Yes.
Not in that scale, but sometimes I do visit what you would call maybe high schools or also talk to students, and it's really, really fascinating. And they have very good questions a lot of the time.
Oh, they do, yes.
All right, so back to the questions. From your experience, what should/could be done by a skeptic group to effectively increase critical thinking? Ooh, that's a talk in itself, I think.
If I knew that, I'd do it. We do it. Look. There's a myth that a lot of skeptical groups don't do enough, or they're lazy, or people say to us all the time. They say, "You skeptics should do this." So after 40 years in Australia, we're doing everything we can. We're a volunteer organization. We can't fix things instantly. We can't just ride in on a horse like a knight and stop bad things happening. We work very hard and do what we can, but especially now, lots of other groups like the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theorists that outnumber us by thousands.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. I guess I'll get back to education and teaching, especially school students. This is the trick from way back. It's fooled people. You're not going to be fooled anymore. This is the science behind it. Think critically. I think that's probably one of the best things we can do, because it's hard to fix damage after it's been done.
And I fully agree. And I can spill the beans a little bit. Next year in September, there's going to be a European Skeptics Congress in Vienna. It's not a secret, but it hasn't been marketed big yet. And I'm responsible for one of the tracks there, which is about education. I think education is extremely important. How do we teach critical thinking? So come to Vienna and find out in September. Here's a good one. Please, what were the funniest predictions from your research? Let us laugh. Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, out of thousands and thousands, a lot of them were not very interesting. They were quite mundane, talking about celebrities' love lives or the weather or stuff like that. But a few of the more unusual ones were that we would have anti-gravity devices by now. We could all fly around using anti-gravity. And I'm sorry that didn't come true. Yeah. I really am. We would also have here in Australia and certain parts of the world, we would be under the reign of King Henry IX. Really? That would be exciting.
Who's that?
Yeah. Prince Harry.
Oh,
it was predicted that Harry would become king by now.
Okay, if he succeeds,
he would be Henry IX.
I see. Okay, well, not yet. Anyway.
Not yet. No, not yet. Yeah. Certainly, there was predictions that Hillary Clinton would be the president of the United States. UFOs would be more frequently seen, especially over New York, and the government would spill the beans and say, yes, aliens are really here. Another prediction was Donald Trump would make a good president and his cabinet would be the best the U.S. has seen for years.
Is that put in the vague category, or?
We thought about that, and ultimately we just had to say wrong, because in any, I mean, unless you're a Trumper or you believe in the big lie or something's going on, by any reasonable, sober, well thought out method, to say that Donald Trump was a good president.
I don't see it either. But.
No, so we just said no, that we're going to call that as wrong, and his cabinet would be the best the U.S. seen for years. Well, his cabinet was coming and going all the time and being sacked and charged, and so we were quite happy to do that. Certainly, people predicted he would win the second election. Another prediction was that the COVID-19 would go away in December last year.
Well, some of them we wished would have happened, right?
Some of them we wish. Parts of New Zealand would be uninhabitable owing to a giant tsunami by now, which I'm glad didn't happen.
So the next question is, were you surprised about the low percentages in the psychic predictions? I mean, I guess the correct predictions. What did you expect?
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect. To be honest, and it just shows human bias. When I started this, I didn't expect it would show that psychics had magical super predicting powers, but I didn't know to what extent. I couldn't magically just turn off all my skepticism, but the project was undertaken with the aim of finding the results. Yeah. No matter what the results were, if the results showed that they could predict at amazing accurately levels, then that's what it would have showed. So I can't really answer that question because I've been doing it for so long, over 12 years, and the numbers, never really, it was stayed around 11% for years and years and years. So I wasn't surprised when it just kept on that low mark. Yeah.
So but that raises a question about the project itself. Is it possible for skeptics to do it very objectively or fully objectively? Because we have a certain
it's not possible
coming in. We can't deny that.
We do, yeah. We can't. You're absolutely right. And you helped in one of the sessions. You were there, so you saw how it worked with all of us talking about it. But what we'd say is, any group around the world doing this would probably come to similar results, but the percentages would be different, because another group might say, this correct prediction, we don't think it's correct. We'll make it too vague. Or some people might say, you called this one, this prediction was expected to happen. We think it's actually, you should mark that. There would be changes, no matter which group did it. And I'm sure if a team of psychics did it, they would score much higher in the correct. But so saying, people, psychics, who cares? Anyone's welcome to repeat a similar project in their part of the world and see what the results are. We tried to be as fair as we possibly could. You know, if something was true, it was true. If somebody predicted Barack Obama would win a second term, it's correct, he did. You know, so a lot of cases there wasn't much to think about.
I'm going to skip to the next one just because it's also about predictions. If sport predictions are generally bad, who is really, really bad at predicting sport? Who is really, really bad at predicting sporting events? So we can bet against them. I don't understand that. Yeah.
I understand that.
Please interpret for me, because I didn't really get what the question was.
It means if somebody keeps getting a prediction about sport wrong, then you should bet the other way.
Yeah. So you could bet against the house, if you will.
You could. Well, I make the point in the official report, which is very long about this project, will appear in the next magazine, The Skeptic, and people can subscribe from around the world. And I make the point in it, I talk about, let's pretend if people could predict the future. Let's pretend that. And with sport and gambling, casinos, horse racing, then those industries would be either non-existent or would be vastly different. Because take casinos, for example. They know to a very tiny percentage what to expect at every table on every night. It's mathematics done for decades and decades and decades. They know. If there's an anomaly and someone's winning too much, it happens. But if it's consistent, they know someone's cheating. That's how casinos work. So if somebody had special powers in horse racing or sporting events or whatever it was to know more than they would get by educated guessing or whatever, the authorities would know. It would just be in the statistics, and that doesn't happen.
Okay, so here's a good one. Are Australians more or less skeptical than Swedish people? And if you see differences, why would that be? I don't know. How many Swedes do you know?
Well, I can answer. I know a few Swedes, but the best way I could possibly answer that is after my tour of Sweden.
Yes, invitation in the post.
And then I can give you a better answer. Yeah. But I don't think there would be much difference. What surprised me, and I don't know what it's like in Sweden, what surprised me is the amount of people who will turn out on the streets here and claim that the vaccines are fake, the virus is fake. And holding up signs about chemtrails and getting back conspiracy theories. There are more people who are being negated by crazy conspiracy theories than I thought, which is just a shame.
Yes, it is.
Maybe in Sweden too, I don't know.
That leads very well into the last question. What makes you go on with your work? And I suspect they mean the skeptical work. What keeps you going, Richard?
I ask myself that every year, and I think, every morning, am I going to do this? I think it's because even when I was a kid, these things really interested me. UFOs, when I was growing up, monsters and UFOs, they were the most fascinating thing I could ever think about. And I still find them interesting, but now more so from a point of view of psychology. Why do people believe this stuff? It's called anomalistic psychology. It's the study of why people believe there are monsters, why people believe they're getting messages from spirits and gods and whatever. So that keeps me going. And after 20 years of doing it, I've got enough experience and practice and knowledge that I don't know what else I would do right now.
Yeah. No, it's a good question, but you haven't grown tired of this yet, and it's still fascinating.
It is, but like anything in life, you have ups and downs. You get very interested, and then I can't think about things that then I might spend some time trying to put my mind to other experiences. But so far, and I've had amazing experiences doing it, adventures. I mean, working with James Randi. I mean, wow. I mean, that's just incredible. And people, and I have a network of friends like yourself all over the world, which is just really interesting and fantastic.
I agree. That is a very big part of what I'm doing as well, is the network of people that you get to know. And the skeptical movement is worldwide, but not bigger than you can actually approach even the biggest, most famous of the skeptics, because they're not really it's not like pop stars. You can still approach them. So you can send an email to Jay Novella or to Richard Saunders or to Pontus Bergman, and he will probably reply. That's interesting. There was a new question coming in, and that's good, because it was a good question, because I was almost about to ask something similar. Isn't the 11% determined by the probability that it could occur? The prediction must be a bit exotic to be published in the media, but not too silly. So I think, I don't know if I interpret this correctly, but what I'm thinking is, did you weight the probability of the questions? The predictions. Let me say, if it's the American election, it's either Hillary or Trump. It's a 50-50 proposition, because they're pretty close in the polls as well, compared to a prediction that could be 1 in 1,000.
Yeah, I talk about this in the report, that the way you can look at this, we discovered there are so many ways you can look at the statistics and the reasoning. It got a bit silly, too many, and that was one of them. And the example I give is I think somebody has predicted at the beginning of the year what sporting team would win the competition. So you've got a big group of teams in a competition, but only one can win. Right? If you make that prediction at the beginning of the year and it's true, it's a correct prediction. Well done. You've 20 teams and you got the one that won. If you make the same prediction before the last match and you've got only 2 teams, then it's a 50-50. And it's correct. So they're both correct. It's just one of the really strange aspects of this project. So I think possibly, since it's all on a database now, we could go back at some stage or other when I've given my mind a rest from it a little bit and look for those and try to judge on a scale. Is this a really amazing far-out prediction, or is it just a bit boring? They're both correct.
It's difficult.
It's difficult. It is difficult. A lot of these predictions, it's presented them, and there was a lot of argument. As you remember, when you joined us that day, that we discussed a lot of these predictions. How does it work? Should we do this?
And I can attest from my little stint there that it was a very rigorous and honest discussion, and people were weighing.
Yeah, we tried. Yeah. But the point is, of course, at the end of the day, if you factor in a margin of error in our work, which there would be naturally, of course, it would have to be a huge margin of error in order for the project to show that there was amazing predictions going on. The numbers would have to grow a lot before we'd think, oh my goodness me, this person really can. It just shows, I think, very clearly that people make lots of guesses, and sometimes the guesses come true.
That's right. Okay, that was the last question, I think, unless somebody throws in a last one again. I was thinking maybe, if you're not too tired. Well, it's morning for you, Richard. Yeah, right.
It's morning.
Right now, at the moment, we have a lot of vaccine protests in Europe, violent sometimes as well, against the restrictions and against the mandating vaccines and things. Now, what is the situation in Australia at the moment?
Well, in my talk, there was some slides of demonstrations. The point is, we are well over 90% double vaccinated in this country, which means the vast majority of citizens in this country are doing the right thing and are getting the vaccination. They know it's a dangerous virus, but there are enough noisy people who are willing to do all sorts of crazy things to make a big commotion and go to the streets and march in thousands. That's because the sheer weight of the number because of the population. And I've seen that all around the world. It as I said before, I'm saddened to see that there are so many people willing to do that, but I must remember, but they're still a tiny minority. But all the rest of us won't go down the streets with big signs saying, "Thank you, vaccinations," and the COVID is real. You don't see that because that's why would we do that?
Perhaps we should.
But the people, perhaps we should. But the people who do march with it's a scam, I won't be told by the government, whatever. And a lot of them in this country, believe it or not, keep quoting the American Constitution because that's what they see on YouTube. It's,
wrong country.
Sometimes I don't know what to think. Sometimes,
No,
they get very passionate about it. But these people will also believe in all sorts of conspiracy theories, like chemtrails and lizard people and microchips and 5G and all that.
But
sort
I must
of
say,
stuff.
90% fully vaccinated is very impressive. In Europe, the average is now 67%. In Bulgaria, it's 25%.
Wow, that's terrible.
And Sweden isn't much better. I think it's 69% in Sweden.
Yeah.
So 90% is something to, well, really.
Yeah, and a lot of that, we absolutely should lay at the feet the blame at the conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers who are very active, and a lot of them have the funds to do it because they have a large supporter base who will send them lots of. Unlike me, I get some money from doing the Skeptic Zone podcast.
But it's just enough maybe to cover your expenses. It's not something to
just enough. It's just But if I was suddenly turned and I became a really strong anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist and I had a podcast about that, I'd probably make a lot more money.
A number of times, I think we're on the wrong side of the business. Not to say that these people do it for the money. I think the vast majority, they are convinced that they are being manipulated or whatever, lied to.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't keep you much longer, Richard. It was great to talk to you. I'm sorry you had to get up so early in the morning, but I'm glad you did. And if people do not listen to the Skeptic Zone, I don't know what to tell you. You should do that every week, every Sunday morning,
every week,
Swedish time it comes out.
Yeah.
But of course you can listen to it whenever you want to. Very interesting always. And it's not about only Australia. It's very international, so you can hear a lot of things.
Yes, I try to cover events from everywhere, and I always make sure that I promote other skeptical groups like yourself.
You have been very generous when doing that. Actually, as a last comment here, we talked about the Vaccination Chronicles. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
the Swedish edition, and that's actually how we met, Richard, because I heard about this on your show, and I contacted you to ask, can I please do the Swedish subtitles? And of course you said yes, and I ended up creating these DVDs, and we handed them out on the annual meeting of the VOF, the Swedish Skeptics, and it was very much appreciated. Remember, you had to upload the whole video over that. So this was way back. It's like 6 or 8 years ago. I don't know.
Some years ago.
And it took 24 hours just to upload the DVD. So I could.
That's right.
Now you can just look at it on YouTube if you want to. But that's how it started, and then
yes, it's on YouTube.
We got in contact, and you wanted to talk to me about Swedish skepticism, and a year later I had my own podcast. So you inspired us. So that's great.
Thank you. That's great to know. That's
so
really good.
Now I will finally leave you, and thank you very much again. Let me just select the next slide to show here. So thank you very much, Richard. Hope to talk to you again soon, and we will upload this to YouTube in a while, and we'll publish the link. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Right, so if you want to see more Skeptics in the pub, I suggest you tune in next week on Thursday, not on this particular channel, but to our friends in the UK. And they have a talk called God and Anatomy. The Anatomy of God, that's interesting. With Professor Francesca Stavrokopoulou. Sorry if I butchered that. I'm sure that will be very interesting, because it always is. It is 7 o'clock UK time, so it's 8 p.m. Swedish time, and if you're in Australia, I guess it's 6 in the morning, so it'll be a challenge maybe. So we do appreciate what they are doing in the UK, and you should look into that. Let me also take the opportunity to push a little bit for my podcast, the European Skeptics podcast. It's not just my podcast, there are 3 of us. It's Andras, Annika and myself, and we do this every week. And you can find us at theesp.eu, and we're not in Richard's class. He has well above 600 episodes. We have just passed 300 episodes, which is not too bad, I think. But with that, I think we will call it a night or a morning, Richard. So thank you very much for watching. We will be back at another time, not decided yet, but stay tuned for that. Cheers. Bye-bye.